There are museums all around the entire world that preserve things that should have never been kept in the first place. In the first video of this saga, we showed a lot of bizarre artifacts, but it was impossible to show them all in just one video. And we still had so much left over: a severed finger from a genius, a doll with actual human teeth, the very core that killed 2 scientists, or even a head that spent decades impaled on a pole. All of it is real, all kept somewhere, and all of them with truly bizarre stories behind them. So sit tight, because this time around the objects are way worse. And in case you haven't seen the first part of this video yet, just click on this card that is appearing on your screen right now. Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button so you don't miss any more videos like this one. Now let's get to the video.
Number 1. At the Galileo Museum in Florence, there is a human finger mounted on a glass pedestal pointing upward. It is the middle finger of Galileo's right hand. In 1737, nearly 100 years after his death, they moved the body to a better tomb, and some admirers took the opportunity to pull off 3 fingers, a tooth, and a vertebra as souvenirs. The church had condemned Galileo for saying the earth revolves around the sun. Today, his finger, on permanent display, makes a very direct gesture toward the sky. Number 2. In a pit in Venice, they found the skull of an elderly woman with a brick shoved into her mouth, forced open and locked by the stone. The woman was buried around the 16th century when the plague killed 50,000 Venetians, nearly a third of the city. When gravediggers reopened the graves to stack more bodies, they sometimes found a swollen corpse with blood on its mouth and the burial shroud torn at the teeth. To them, it was a vampire, chewing its own cloth to magically spread the disease. The stone was meant to stop the vampire from biting again. Number 3. Oliver Cromwell ruled England and died of natural causes in 1658. The problem came afterward. When the monarchy returned, they dug up the body, hanged the corpse, and cut off the head. Then they impaled it on a post in London, where it stayed for nearly 30 years exposed to the elements. Over time, the head fell, became a collector's item, passed through a horror fair, and was sold from hand to hand. Only in 1960 did someone finally decide to bury it for good, in secret, at a college in Cambridge. Number 4. In the Warren collection, the paranormal hunting couple's archive, there's a feather-covered doll called the Shadow Doll. It has a real human tooth embedded in it. The story is that it was not made for play, but for a ritual, where it would cause harm to whoever the owner wished to target. They bought it from an antique dealer and placed it in a glass case with a warning not to touch. It could all be just legend, but it is an object made on purpose to look like a curse, and that alone is enough. Number 5. At the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, there is an old Volkswagen van that belonged to Dr. Jack Kevorkian. It was the vehicle where he helped terminally ill patients end their own lives with a machine he built himself. Kevorkian said it was mercy. The court said it was homicide, and in 1999 he was imprisoned for it. The van sat idle for years, until it became a museum piece. It is just a rusted van, but many people died inside it by their own choice. Number 6. Marie Curie discovered radium and polonium and won 2 Nobel Prizes for it. What nobody counted on at the time was that it was slowly killing her. The notebooks where she recorded her experiments are at the National Library in Paris, stored in lead-lined boxes. To leaf through them, you sign a risk waiver and wear protective clothing. The radium that contaminated the paper has a half-life of about 1,600 years. In other words, those notebooks will remain dangerous for roughly 15 centuries. Number 7. In Kutna Hora, in the Czech Republic, there is a chapel that is small on the outside and absurd on the inside. It is the Sedlec ossuary, decorated with the bones of 40 to 70,000 people. In 1870, a woodcarver named František Rindt was hired to organize the mountain of bones that had piled up there over centuries of plague and war. He decided to make art out of them. In the middle of the ceiling hangs a giant chandelier that uses, at least once, every different bone in the human body. Number 8. This is the cauldron that belonged to Ed Gain, the butcher of Plainfield. When police entered his farmhouse in 1957, they found a house assembled from body parts, stolen from cemeteries, and from at least 2 victims. Gain became the basis for Norman Bates, Leatherface, and Buffalo Bill in the movies. The cauldron is just a large farm pot. The macabre detail is what he used it for. According to authorities, the cauldron contained human entrails when it was found. Number 9. In Mexico, in Guanajuato, there is a museum full of mummies standing upright, mouths agape in a silent scream. They were not embalmed. The dry soil of the region mummified the bodies on its own, and the reason they were dug up is the cruelest part. Starting in 1865, anyone who did not pay a fee to maintain the burial plot had their relative removed from the grave. The dried bodies were stacked in a storage room until someone realized they could charge admission. Today, they are the town's main attraction. Number 10. St. Catherine of Siena died in Rome in 1380, and her body stayed there. But her hometown, Siena, wanted the saint back. Since taking the entire body was impossible, the story goes that they removed the head and hid it in a sack. When the guards ordered the sack opened, it appeared full of rose petals and only turned back into a head after they passed. Today, her mummified head and one of her fingers are displayed at the Basilica of San Domenico, gazing at the faithful from inside a reliquary. Number 11. At the Haunted Museum, there is a doll named Peggy who sits in a room all by herself. The warning is clear. Do not look into her eyes for too long. The reputation is that you do not even need to be near her. People say they have felt ill just from seeing a photo or video of the doll. Headaches, nausea, and tightness in the chest. There have even been reports of someone claiming to have had a heart attack. Proving any of this is impossible, of course, but the museum takes it so seriously that they film the reactions of anyone who faces Peggy head-on. Number 12. Beneath a church in Dublin, Ireland, there's a crypt with bodies naturally mummified by the dry air and the limestone. The most famous is nicknamed the Crusader. He is a massive man, over 6.5 feet tall, dead for about 800 years. For a long time, the tradition was for visitors to shake his dried hand for good luck. So many people touched it that the skin darkened from all the use. They stopped allowing contact not long ago, after vandals broke a skull. Number 13. In 1845, a British expedition vanished in the Arctic searching for a passage through the ice. The more than 100 men died from cold, starvation, and lead from the canned food. In 1984, scientists exhumed 3 sailors buried in the ice, among them John Torrington. The bodies were frozen and nearly intact, with their eyes half open, staring at the camera nearly 140 years later. Cut marks on the bones of other crew members confirmed the worst. They had resorted to cannibalism. Number 14. At the Mauritianum Museum in Altenburg, Germany, there is something that looks straight out of a nightmare. It is a rat king. 32 dead rats with their tails tangled into a single knot, stuck together by filth, feces, and dried blood. They found it in 1828, inside the chimney of a mill. It is the largest ever recorded. In the Middle Ages, finding one of these was considered a sign of plague and disaster on the way. Science still debates how the animals get tangled up like that without being able to free themselves. Number 15. St. Teresa of Avila died in 1582, and her body was found without decomposing. Then the dismantling began. They cut off the hand, the fingers, pieces, and scattered them as relics across half the world. Her left hand had the strangest fate of all. The dictator Francisco Franco kept it and stored it in a reliquary beside his bed, and they say he slept with it nearby. Only when Franco died in 1975 was the saint's hand returned to the Carmelite nuns. Number 16. At the Warren Anatomical Museum at Harvard, there's a skull with a hole straight through it, alongside the iron bar that did the damage. In 1848, Phineas Gage was working with explosives on a railroad when a bar over 3 feet long launched and passed through his head, entering through the cheek and exiting through the top. The absurd part is that he did not die. He stood up, spoke, walked, but his personality changed so drastically that friends said he was no longer the same man. Number 17. At the Museum of the Weird in Austin, Texas, there is a hairy creature frozen in a block of ice, looking half man, half ape. They call it the Minnesota Iceman. In the 1960s, it toured fairs and circuses across the United States, advertised as the missing link of evolution, and even scientists went to take a look. The Smithsonian showed interest. Then came the news. They examined it and concluded it was rubber and latex. Even knowing it is fake, the line to see it continues. Number 18. In the Cathedral of Naples, Italy, there are 2 vials containing the dried blood of San Gennaro, a bishop beheaded around the year 300. In front of the crowd, that dried blood more than 1,500 years old turns liquid again, without a definitive explanation. The phenomenon happens 3 times a year, on fixed dates. The belief is ancient and sends the city into a frenzy, and when the blood does not liquefy, the people panic, because it is taken as a warning that disaster is coming. That is what happened in 2020 at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 19. The Iron Maiden is that upright coffin full of spikes on the inside that closes and pierces the person alive. Everyone thinks it is a medieval torture device. It is not. They studied the piece and discovered it was assembled in the 19th century, combining old parts to impress tourists at fairs. The most famous one was in Nuremberg, Germany, but not even the original survived to tell the tale. It was destroyed in an Allied bombing raid in 1944. Number 20. At the Haunted Museum, there's an antique mirror linked to Bela Lugosi, the actor who became famous playing Dracula in the movies. They say he used the mirror for divination rituals, staring at the reflection until something else appeared in the depths. The legend of the piece is that a dark figure still appears inside it, and that visitors have felt ill just from looking too long. Skeptics doubt the mirror was even Lugosi's. The museum owner prefers not to take chances and keeps it well covered. Number 21. In Buryatia, in Siberia, there's a Buddhist monk named Dashi Dorjo Itigilov, who died in 1927 seated in the meditation position. Before passing, he asked his disciples to unearth him after a few decades. In 2002, they opened the coffin and the body was preserved in a way nobody could explain, with the skin and joints still soft. For the faithful, he did not die, he merely entered a deep state of meditation. Today he sits in a temple as if he were still there. Number 22. At Ford's Theater in Washington, there's a tiny single-shot pistol kept under glass. It is the Derringer that John Wilkes Booth used to kill President Abraham Lincoln on the night of April 14, 1865. Booth was an actor who knew the theater inside out. He waited for the right scene, entered the presidential box, and shot Lincoln in the back of the head at point-blank range. The weapon is small, fits in the palm of the hand, and holds just one bullet. That was all he needed to change the history of the United States. Number 23. The Black Aggie is a bronze statue of a hooded figure that stood on a tomb at Druid Ridge Cemetery in Maryland. It was an unauthorized copy of a famous sculpture and became a magnet for legend. They said at night her eyes glowed red, that grass would not grow in her shadow, and that sitting in the statue's lap brought death. So many vandals and curiosity seekers showed up that the family removed it in 1967. Today it sits in a hidden courtyard in Washington, far from any grave. Number 24. At the National Museum of Scotland, there is a beheading machine called the Maiden, which operated in Edinburgh centuries before the French guillotine existed. It was a heavy blade that dropped along rails and cut the condemned person's head off in one stroke. The darkest irony belongs to the man who helped bring the contraption to Scotland. The Earl of Morton, regent of the country, was one of those responsible for it. Years later he fell from grace, was condemned, and died on the very same machine he helped install. Number 25. Among the horrors displayed from the Buchenwald camp, there are objects attributed to Ilse Koch, wife of a Nazi commander. There were stories of a lampshade and a shrunken human head taken from prisoners. The accusation traveled the world at the end of the war. But at the trial, the human origin of some of the pieces could not be proven, and the matter has remained surrounded by doubt to this day. What is not in doubt is what that camp was, and that is why those items remain stored as evidence. Number 26. In 1971, in Hexham, England, 2 boys dug up the backyard and found 2 small stone heads. From that point on, the neighbor swore she had seen inside her house a creature half man, half ram, like a werewolf, at night. The heads ended up with researchers, and the story only grew. Then a man came forward saying he himself had made the stones in 1956 for his daughter to play with. In the middle of the confusion, the Hexham heads simply vanished, and nobody knows where they ended up. Number 27. In 1892, in the city of Fall River, Mr. Andrew Borden and his wife were killed with axe blows inside their home. The main suspect was their daughter, Lizzie Borden, in one of the most famous cases in American history. In the basement, police found a hatchet head without its handle, identified as the murder weapon. Lizzie was tried and acquitted, and nobody else was ever convicted. The hatchet remains stored at the city's Historical Society. Number 28. At the Tower of London, there is a torture device with an almost affectionate name, the Scavenger's Daughter. It does the opposite of the rack, which stretched the victim. This one folded the person inward. It was an iron arc that locked the entire body, compressing it into a ball until blood came out of the nose and ears. It was invented by an official of King Henry VIII. The rack was at least famous. This one inflicted damage in silence, folded away in a corner. Number 29. At the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, there is a silvery sealed bottle with an old label. The label says there is a witch trapped inside, and warns that if you let her out, she will cause a lot of trouble. The bottle was collected around 1915 near the southern coast of England from an old woman who insisted the witch was in there. It was donated to the museum by a folklore scholar in 1926. It has been more than 100 years, and to this day, true to the warning, nobody has had the nerve to open the bottle. Number 30. Julia Pastrana was born in Mexico in the 19th century with a condition that covered her face and body and hair. Instead of living in peace, she was exhibited across Europe as the Ape Woman, and her own husband was the one who charged admission. When she died, he did not stop. He had the body embalmed and continued exhibiting her mummy for more than 100 years. Only in 2013, after a long campaign, was Julia finally repatriated and buried with dignity in her homeland in Mexico. Number 31. In Australia, there's a wooden doll named Letta with a frighteningly bizarre face and a reputation for being haunted. The disturbing detail is that it has real human hair on its head, and nobody knows whose it is. The man who found it says he discovered it under an abandoned house and that the doll is supposedly about 200 years old. The owners swear it moves on its own and even lets out a low growl. Dogs bark and flee when near it, they say. It could all be legend, but the hair, that part is real. Number 32. Beneath a church in Rome, there is a crypt with several rooms decorated entirely with human bones. They are the remains of approximately 3,700 Capuchin friars, arranged in designs on the ceiling and walls over the centuries. There are skulls turned into light fixtures, vertebrae turned into ornaments, skeletons dressed in habits. On a plaque, a sentence sums up the message of the place for visitors. Something like, "What you are now, we once were. What we are now, you shall be." Number 33. In the Warren collection, there are two pieces that fit right in with the rest. One is described as a vampire coffin, the kind that became part of the folklore of those who hunt the undead. The other is a Japanese samurai armor, which according to the house legend is supposedly cursed and has a reputation for moving on its own. None of this can be proven, and it is wise to be skeptical. Number 34. The composer, Frédéric Chopin, died in Paris in 1849 with an enormous fear of being buried alive. Because of this, he made a specific request that they remove his heart from his body after death. The heart was preserved in a jar, probably with cognac, and his sister Ludwika smuggled the organ hidden all the way to Warsaw, Poland. There it was sealed inside a pillar of a church, where it remains to this day. In 2014, they opened the jar in secret just to check, and sealed it again. Number 35. In several European museums, there are specimens of the breaking wheel, one of the cruelest methods of execution humanity ever devised. It worked like this. They tied the condemned to a large wooden wheel and broke the bones of the arms and legs, one by one, with an iron bar. Then they threaded the broken limbs through the spokes of the wheel and raised everything up high. The victim could take days to die up there. It was a death sentence designed to last as long as possible. Number 36. For 17 years, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, mailed bombs across the United States, killing 3 people. He lived isolated in a tiny wooden cabin in the middle of the Montana wilderness without running water or electricity. When the FBI arrested him in 1996, they took the entire cabin as evidence. Later, it became an attraction at a museum in Washington for more than 10 years. That museum closed in 2019, and the FBI took the cabin back. Today, it is stored at the agency's headquarters, out of public reach. Number 37. When Napoleon Bonaparte died in exile in 1821, they performed an autopsy on his body. And here enters one of the most bizarre stories in the history of human relics. The story goes that during the examination, someone cut off the emperor's genitalia and smuggled it away. From that point on, Napoleon's supposed organ became a collector's item, passing through auctions and owners for nearly 2 centuries. In 1977, an American doctor purchased the piece, which stayed with his family. The eternal question remains, is it really his? Number 38. At the Beinecke Library at Yale University, there's a book nobody has been able to read. It is the Voynich manuscript, roughly 200 handwritten pages in an unknown alphabet, filled with plants that do not exist and women in strange baths. The parchment has been dated and is genuinely from the early 15th century. Wartime cryptographers, mathematicians, and people from around the entire world have tried to decipher it. All have failed. It could be a secret language, a lost code, or just a brilliant hoax. Number 39. In Amsterdam, the Netherlands, there is the Vrolijk Museum, which houses one of the largest collections of human body anomalies. There are rows upon rows of fetuses with malformations preserved in glass jars, skeletons of conjoined twins, skulls with a single eye socket in the middle of the forehead. The collection was started by a father and son, both doctors, in the 19th century, who studied how the body forms incorrectly. Not a place for a weak stomach. But every one of those jars was once the beginning of a life that took an unexpected turn. Number 40. In the Warren collection, there is an idol with a demonic appearance, with horns and a decidedly unfriendly face. The story told by the collection is that it was found abandoned in the woods of Sandy Hook, Connecticut, around 1991, and that it was supposedly linked to a cult that gathered in the area. There is no way to confirm who made it or why, but someone carved that thing, carried it into the middle of the woods, and left it there, and the Warrens found the object disturbing enough to lock it away with the rest of the museum. Number 41. At the Haunted Museum, there's a rocking chair linked to one of the most famous possession cases in the United States, the one that became known as the Devil in Connecticut. In 1981, a young man claimed to have committed a murder because he was possessed, and his defense tried to use that in court. The chair came from the house where everything happened, and was purchased from the brother of the boy who claimed to be possessed. It is just a wooden chair, but the family that lived through it preferred to get rid of it. Number 42. The Orlov diamond is an enormous stone of nearly 190 carats that today sits set into the Russian imperial scepter, kept at the Kremlin. The legend of its origin is what frightens. They say the diamond was ripped from the eye of a sacred statue in a temple in southern India by a deserting soldier who infiltrated the place. After passing through many hands, a count purchased it and gave it as a gift to Empress Catherine of Russia. Legend says the temple never forgave the theft. Number 43. The Mokomokai are heads of Maori warriors from New Zealand, tattooed and preserved with the entire face intact. For them, it was an honor, a way to preserve the memory of ancestors and chiefs. The problem came when the Europeans arrived. The tattooed heads became merchandise, traded for firearms, and this fueled a wave of war and violence to produce more heads. Today, many museums have agreed to return the pieces, and New Zealand is working to bring them all home. Number 44. When Albert Einstein died in 1955, his wish was to be cremated entirely. That is not what happened. The pathologist who performed the autopsy, Thomas Harvey, removed the genius's brain without permission and took it home. He sliced the organ into approximately 240 pieces and stored everything in jars, driving around with parts of the brain in his car for decades. The idea was to study what made that mind different. Today, slides of Einstein's brain are scattered across museums. Number 45. The composer Joseph Haydn died in Vienna in 1809. A few days after the burial, some admirers obsessed with phrenology, the idea that the shape of the skull revealed genius, bribed a gravedigger and stole the head from the tomb. Haydn's skull circulated among collectors and societies for more than a century. Meanwhile, the body remained buried with a random skull in its place. Only in 1954 was the real head finally returned and reunited with the rest of him. Number 46. The Hands Resist Him is a painting of a boy standing next to a life-sized doll with several small hands pressing against the glass of a door behind them. It became famous when it was listed for sale on an auction website, advertised as cursed. They said the gallery owner who displayed it and the critic who wrote about it both died within a year. The story traveled the entire internet, proving the curse is impossible. But the painting alone is already uncomfortable to look at. Number 47. In Nis, Serbia, there is a tower built with real human skulls. In 1809, during a revolt against the Ottoman Empire, a rebel commander, surrounded and with no way out, blew up his own gunpowder magazine to avoid surrendering, taking enemies with him. In retaliation, the Ottomans cut the heads off the dead rebels and cemented 952 skulls into a tower as a warning. It backfired. It became a symbol of resistance. Today, about 58 skulls remain in the tower. Number 48. In European museums, there are iron masks of cruel appearance called the Scold's Bridle. They were used centuries ago, mainly in Great Britain, to punish women accused of talking too much, gossiping, or arguing with their husband. The mask locked around the entire head and had a plate that went into the mouth, sometimes with a spike, hurting the tongue and preventing the person from speaking. Then they paraded the woman through the street for everyone to see. The crime in the end was having a voice. Number 49. At the Carnavalet Museum in Paris, there are antique copies of the French Constitution with a chilling story attached to them. It is said that some of those copies were bound in human skin, taken from enemies killed during the bloodiest period of the French Revolution. The legend even speaks of a tannery that processed human skin. Historians debate how much of this is true and how much is exaggeration, but the practice of binding books in human skin, that did in fact exist. Number 50. At Aztec sites, archaeologists found clay whistles shaped like skulls that became known as death whistles. When you blow into one, it does not produce a little note. It produces a sharp, anguishing sound like the scream of many people at once, a howl that sends shivers. Some were found alongside the remains of sacrificed people. Nobody knows for certain what they were used for. The theories range from ritual use to a way of terrorizing the enemy before battle. Number 51. Old Sparky is the nickname the United States gave to more than one electric execution chair. The one from Texas, for example, now retired, is in a prison museum in the city of Huntsville, and anyone can walk right up and look. It is a heavy wooden chair with straps and wires. Hundreds of condemned people died sitting there, with the current running through their bodies. Number 52. Sarah Bartman was a woman of the Khoikhoi people from South Africa, taken to Europe around 1810 and displayed on stage as the Hottentot Venus because of her body. She died in Paris in 1815, and the humiliation did not end there. Her skeleton, brain, and parts of her body remained on display at a French museum for more than 150 years. Only in 2002, after much pressure, were Sarah's remains returned to South Africa and buried in her homeland. Number 53. At a casino in Nevada, there is a bullet-riddled 1934 Ford. It is the car in which the criminals Bonnie and Clyde were killed in a police ambush on a Louisiana road in May of that year. The officers waited in hiding and unloaded more than 130 rounds into the vehicle, finishing off the pair of robbers who had become legends in the United States. The car was never repaired. The bullet holes are all still there, telling in metal the final seconds of the two. Number 54. In 1971, in a simple house in the village of Belmez, Spain, a woman named Maria Gomez saw a human face appear on the cement floor of her kitchen. She scraped it off, redid the floor, and the face came back. Over time, more faces appeared, and the house became a pilgrimage and investigation site. They tore out pieces of the floor to store and study. Some say it was paint and fraud. Others never accepted any explanation. The faces of Belmez remained between the paranormal and the trick. Number 55. At the New Jersey State Police Museum, there is a homemade wooden ladder that became famous for the worst reason. In 1932, the baby of aviator Charles Lindbergh, who had crossed the Atlantic, was kidnapped and killed. The criminal used that ladder to reach the window of the child's room. An expert managed to link the wood of the ladder to that of the suspect, Bruno Hauptmann, who was eventually convicted. It became known as the crime of the century, and that simple ladder was the piece that helped solve everything. Number 57. Tamerlane was a brutal conqueror of Central Asia, and his tomb in Samarkand had a reputation for being cursed. An inscription reportedly said that whoever disturbed his rest would unleash upon the world an invader even worse. In June of 1941, Soviet scientists opened the burial anyway to study the bones. 2 days later, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in the largest attack of the war. Coincidence or not, the body was reburied with honors just before the tide turned. Number 58. At the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, there's a macabre toy of nearly life-size. It is Tipu's tiger, a wooden automaton showing a tiger mounted on top of a European soldier biting his neck. There's a crank on the side. When you turn it, the soldier's arm rises and falls, and from inside come sounds, the groan of a man dying and the growl of the tiger. It was the toy of an Indian sultan who hated the British, captured by them in 1799. Number 59. At the end of World War II, in a laboratory in the United States, there was a sphere of plutonium the size of a softball. They nicknamed it the Demon Core. In 1945, a scientist let a brick fall onto the core, triggered a reaction, and received a lethal dose of radiation. He died 25 days later. 9 months after that, another physicist slipped a screwdriver on the same core and was killed the same way. The original was melted down, and today a replica exists in a museum. Number 60. At the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, there is an old iron spearhead linked to one of the most powerful legends in Christianity. They say it is the Spear of Destiny, the same one that supposedly pierced the side of Christ on the cross. The belief is that whoever controlled the spear would control the fate of the world. Several conquerors took an interest in it throughout history, and Hitler was obsessed with the piece, to the point of taking it when he annexed Austria. More than one spear out there claims the same title. Number 61. Benjamin Franklin invented a musical instrument in 1761 called the glass harmonica. It consists of nested glass bowls that spin, and the musician plays by running a wet finger along the rim, producing an ethereal and eerie sound. Soon came the reputation that the sound drove both the player and the listener mad, causing melancholy and even insanity. The instrument was even banned in some cities. Today, the suspicion is that the blame lay with the lead in the glass, not the sound. Number 62. At the museum in Salta, Argentina, there are 3 Inca children who were sacrificed in a ritual at the top of a volcano more than 19,700 feet high, about 500 years ago. The extreme cold froze the bodies so perfectly that they appear to be merely sleeping, with skin, hair, and clothing intact, and blood still preserved inside. The eldest was about 13 years old. One of the other girls was struck by lightning after death, which burned part of her face and body. Number 63. Beneath the busy streets of Paris lies a labyrinth of tunnels lined with the bones of approximately 6 million people. At the end of the 18th century, the city's cemeteries were so overcrowded they became a public health crisis. The solution was to transfer the dead to the old underground quarries. The bones were stacked with macabre care, femurs and skulls forming entire walls. At one entrance, a sign warns, "Stop, this is the Empire of Death." Number 64. At the Cathedral of Turin, Italy, a linen cloth is kept bearing the faded image of a man who appears to have been crucified, with marks of whipping and nails. For many believers, it is the shroud, the cloth that supposedly wrapped the body of Christ. In 1988, a carbon test dated the fabric between the years 1260 and 1390, meaning the Middle Ages, not the time of Jesus. Even so, nobody has properly explained how the image formed there, and the debate has not ended to this day. Number 65. In a cathedral in the city of Ghent, Belgium, hangs one of the most valuable altarpieces in the world, painted in the 15th century. In 1934, one of the panels, called the Just Judges, was stolen, and to this day it has never surfaced. The thief even sent letters and clues, but took the secret to the grave. In place of the original panel for decades, only a copy by another painter is hung there. It is the largest unsolved art theft in Belgium, and the real painting could be anywhere. Number 66. The English poet Percy Shelley drowned in 1822 when his boat capsized in a storm off the coast of Italy. The body only washed ashore days later, already in bad shape. Under quarantine law, he was cremated right there, on a pyre built at the water's edge with his friends nearby. And then something strange happened. While the rest of the body turned to ash, Shelley's heart did not burn. A friend reached into the flames and pulled the organ out of the fire. The heart ended up in the hands of the widow, Mary Shelley, the same woman who wrote the novel Frankenstein. Instead of burying it, she kept her husband's heart wrapped up and reportedly inside a copy of a poem he had written. Mary carried it with her for nearly 30 years until her own death. When she passed in 1851, they found the dried heart stored in her writing desk. Only after that was the organ buried, alongside the couple's son in 1889. Number 67. At the Heraklion Museum on the island of Crete, there is a clay disc the size of a dinner plate that has been driving archaeologists crazy for more than a century. It is the Phaistos disc, found in 1908 in the ruins of an ancient palace. Both sides are covered in symbols spiraling from the center to the edge. The most curious part is that these symbols were not drawn by hand. They were stamped into the soft clay with seals, which may make the disc the oldest example of printing in history. There are 241 signs in total made with 45 different stamps, and nobody has ever managed to read a single word of what is there. The language is unknown, the subject is unknown, and nobody knows whether it is a prayer, a poem, or a list. People from around the entire world have tried to decipher it, without success. There are even scholars who suspect the disc is a modern forgery. Though the majority accept it is genuinely from the Bronze Age, the mystery remains standing. Number 68. Around the 1880s in Paris, the body of a young woman was pulled from the Seine River. Nobody recognized her, and she entered history simply as the unknown woman of the Seine. Legend says a morgue attendant was so impressed by the serene face and faint smile that he had a mold made, a death mask. Copies of that mask became a craze across Europe. People hung the face of the drowned woman on their living room wall as decoration, without anyone knowing who she had been. Her story would have ended there, if not for a twist in the 20th century. In 1960, a toymaker decided to create the first dummy for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation training. That first aid mannequin everyone has practiced on, and the face they chose for the dummy was precisely that of the unknown woman of the Seine. Because of this, her face has been kissed by millions of people learning to save lives. They call her the most kissed face in the world. Number 69. In 1912 in England, they announced a discovery that shook science. The missing link between ape and man, found at a place called Piltdown. The fragments had a human skull and a jaw of a very primitive appearance. For decades, Piltdown Man entered the textbooks as proof of human evolution, displayed at the Natural History Museum in London. Scientists from around the world took it seriously. The problem was that the find was too good to be true. Only in 1953, more than 40 years later, did careful examinations reveal the fraud. Someone had combined a human skull with the jaw of an orangutan and chimpanzee teeth, filed down to look human, and stained everything to give the appearance of an ancient fossil. Piltdown Man never existed. It was one of the greatest lies in the history of science, and it fooled the top experts for 4 decades. To this day, there is debate over who the forger was, with no definitive answer. Number 70. At the American Museum of Natural History in New York, there is a grayish-blue sapphire of 563 carats, one of the largest in the world. It is the Star of India, famous for displaying a 6-pointed star effect when light hits it. It is billions of years old and took an enormous amount of time to form in nature. but what made the stone legendary was not its beauty or rarity. It was the night it simply disappeared from the museum. In 1964, a group of thieves led by Jack Murphy, known as Murph the Surf, broke into the museum through the bathroom window. They discovered that the alarm on the display case had had its battery dead for ages, and they took the Star of India along with other jewels, without setting off a thing. It was one of the most daring heists of the era. Fortunately, the stone was recovered shortly after, hidden in a locker at a bus station in Miami. Today, it is back at the museum, behind much more secure glass. Number 71. At the Prado Museum in Madrid, there is a painting that is hard to stare at for long. It shows a god with eyes bulging with madness devouring the body of his own son. It is Saturn devouring his son, by the Spaniard Francisco Goya. The most disturbing part is that Goya did not paint this for anyone to see. He painted it directly on the wall of the house where he lived, already old, deaf, and isolated from the world, during a dark period when he covered the entire house in nightmare images. These works became known as the Black Paintings, and they were never made for any gallery. They were what was going through Goya's mind during a moment of profound anguish, painted on the walls for himself alone. Years after his death, someone went through the enormous effort of removing the paintings from the walls and transferring them to canvas in order to save them. That is how Saturn ended up in a museum. But it was born as a secret on the walls of the house of a man in suffering. Number 72. In a military museum in Vienna, Austria, there is a black, elegant automobile from 1914. It looks ordinary, but it is the car where World War I began. On June 28th of that year, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was riding in this car through the streets of Sarajevo alongside his wife. It was there, inside it, that the two were shot and killed by a young nationalist. The assassination lit the fuse of a war that killed millions. Over time, a legend of a curse grew around the car. Stories spread that several subsequent owners of the vehicle suffered accidents and misfortunes, as if the tragedy of Sarajevo had stuck to the metal. Most of those stories were later debunked, stitched together after the fact to give the object a supernatural air. The truth needs no ghost. That car sitting in the museum was the exact place where the 20th century took the bloodiest turn ever seen. And that is enough.